and welcome to this very special evening of Freddy's book launch. My name is Leslie Kaplan, and together with Freddy's wonderful children and his family, we're very happy to welcome you here this evening. Number one, please can you turn your cell phones off or on silent? 1, 2, 3, now. Thank you. Okay? Whoever's phone rings during the evening is going to have to do a dance up here, so you might as well turn it off. A dance. Dance. Yes, some of us say pronouncing things a bit differently. Anyway, firstly, a very big thank you to Emunah Yerushalayim, or Emunah Jerusalem. We're using their hall tonight. For anyone who doesn't know, this is their offices. Thank you also to our photographer, Sharon Ulchel, at the back. Thank you, Sharon. If you need any photography jobs, go to Sharon. Thank you also very much to Les Glassman, our videographer. You need any videoing, or you need a dentist, you go to Les. He happens to be both. Videoing is his hobby, okay, but professionally he's a dentist. And thank you also to all our wonderful girls and everybody else for helping and set up this evening. So tonight is a very special evening. It doesn't take one day or 1 month to write a book. Most of us, I assume, have not written books in our lives, so we wouldn't know. But basically tonight is a culmination of many months and even years of thoughts and physical working on it, and physically working on it, and also emotionally. And so it's a very special evening. Freddy's going to be talking, and afterwards his book here is going to be available for sale. After this evening, it will be available via Amazon or via Freddy's website. And of course, any purchases from this evening, Freddy is very kindly, he's going to be donating a portion of the book sales to Emunah Yerushalayim's very important and special projects supporting kids, adults in distress and in need. So you'll also be giving to tzedakah by buying it today, as opposed to buying it even tomorrow via Amazon. So without further ado, I would like to introduce, and then I'm going to take a back seat, the one and only Freddy freundlich.
Wow, this is amazing. Thank you for everybody for being here. And I have to say that people say, well, who did the refreshments, who did all this? And it was Leslie. Leslie is amazing. Really, I don't know that I could have done it without her. Oh, wow. I think it's a little bit overwhelming. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyimanu v'yihiyanu lazman hazeh. Amen. You know, the shehecheyanu bracha, the prayer that we say, as we all know, it's said when we get to a certain point in our life, or we have something new in our lives. It's usually, I think it's always a celebratory blessing of some sort. I put blessings into 2 categories. The first is what I call the route category, and the second would be the foxhole category. Now, what do I mean by route? I don't mean by like Route 66. A route. We get into a route. We do things by route. So those of us who say blessings, we may say hundreds of blessings in a day. We eat something, we drink something, we thank God for it. And I'm not saying we don't mean it or don't think about it, but let's be honest. It's route. We say it, the people around us say amen. But I guarantee you, if you're in the Sahara Desert, stuck with no food or water for 3 days, and you find an oasis with beautiful, refreshing, tasty water, you're going to say that blessing, that shahakol, and it's not going to be by route. It's going to be what I call a foxhole blessing, a foxhole prayer. For those of you who don't know, a foxhole is what soldiers dig when they're in the field in the middle of war to prevent themselves from getting killed from bullets or missiles flying. Many of you have probably heard the expression, there are no atheists in foxholes. My favorite example of this is the Gomel bracha, the Gomel blessing. Now, we usually hear that almost every Shabbat we're in shul, we're in Beit Knesset, and what do we hear? We hear people say Agomel, and we say Amen. And what do we usually think it's about? People flew. They flew over a body of water. Now, what is the Gomel blessing about? It's about thanking God for getting us through a life-threatening situation. What is so life-threatening about flying from here to New York? And I can understand being in New York, why you would say that, but not flying to and from. Why? Because back in the day, doing a journey over water was a life-threatening thing, and you really wanted to thank God. So we do it for tradition. Similar, a woman gives birth. Now, there is a little more danger even today with a woman giving birth than traveling abroad. But still, thank God, most births go just fine. So basically what happens is, somebody says this prayer, this blessing, we say amen, and we don't think anything about it. It's a route blessing. But once in a while, we're in the Beit Knesset, and we hear somebody say the Gomel, and they say it with a little hesitation in their voice, perhaps a sob, and all of a sudden our ears perk up, because we know this is a foxhole blessing. Now I explain all this because after you guys have read my book, you'll know that my Shechianu right now was a foxhole. It was not a route. Born on the right side of the tracks. A true story about an out-of-the-box kid stuck in an in-the-box world. Well, if you don't know already, I'm that out-of-the-box kid who was stuck in this in-the-box world. I was so out of the box that the world spit me out. And most people who knew me back in those days, and there are some people in this room who did, would have put money that I probably wouldn't have reached adulthood alive. And if I did, I'd certainly be in a prison somewhere. Well, here I am today in front of you, and obviously I'm alive, and I'm not in prison right now. So what's the turnaround point? What happens?
Elections.
The possibility. But what is the turnaround point? Well, you know what? There is no one turnaround point. No such thing as one turnaround point. There are lots of things that happens in one's life. But I can tell you one thing. The turnaround point did not come when others thought it did. They either thought I had turned around before I had actually turned around, because I'm a great BSer and I know how to put on a show as if things are wonderful, or other people thought it came well after it actually did. I don't know exactly when the turnaround point came, but I do know it was when I discovered the magical power from within, which incidentally is what we've listed the talk to be about this evening. When we came up with that title, The Magical Power from Within, it just hit me. It just hit me like that. We were throwing around different possibilities, and when I heard that, I said, that's what we're gonna go with. Magical. It's such a magical word. Wonderful. This magical word for me, it conjures up images of just, I don't know, of kids, of wonderful. I remember when I was a kid, I don't know if any of you remember this, there used to be a TV show on every Sunday night called The Wonderful World of Disney. Any of you remember that? Okay, well, they could have said it was the magical world of Disney because it was the same, because that's what Disney was always all about. Magical world. And the truth of the matter is, one of the things that actually saved me is the fact that I fell in love and I got to know magical from a very young age. A lot of things happened to me along the way. And again, I'm not going to go through most of what's in the book because obviously I want you to read the book.
But the book is a journey, and it's about little things which on its own doesn't change the world. But one thing after another changes the world. And that's what happened in my childhood. I went from one situation to another situation, nobody realizing what the situation would lead to. And there's one part in the very beginning of the book which I think illustrates this. And I was approximately 5 years old. My life was great at that time. Why was my life great at that time? Because I was a kid. Kids' lives are great. I would imagine mostly everybody in this room, with the exception of my children, have children or grandchildren. And if you don't have children or grandchildren, I'm willing to bet that you were one time a kid. Kids are happy. They live happy lives. What happens to a kid? What ruins a kid? Adults. School is part of it. But in essence, it's we, the adults, who ruin kids. It's hard to find a kid, I'm talking about a young kid who is not happy. It doesn't mean they don't have what I call mosquito bites. They do fall, they skin their knees, and they cry, but they get right back up afterwards. We adults, we skin our knees. We remember it 20 years down the road. Oh, back then I skinned my knee. I hate to say this. Generally speaking, kids are happy. Generally speaking, adults are unhappy. Okay, that's the sad fact of life. When you write a book like this, everybody wants to know why you wrote this book. What prompted you to write this book? Well, I wrote this book, first there were some personal reasons, and there were some business reasons. My business is I train people. I do corporate communications, I train people in sales, and I work with people all over the world, all different types of people, different ages, different sexes, different races, everything. And sometimes I have a problem with credibility. Because I will talk to people and I will say, I know exactly what you're talking about. In fact, many times people say, oh, you're a coach. And I emphatically say, no, I'm not a coach. A, because a coach is a certain skill set. But I say, if anything, I'm a mentor. So they'll say, what's the difference between a mentor and a coach? And I explain that coaches are teachers. And there are some fantastic coaches out there, just like there are some fantastic teachers, some of which happen to be in this room, okay? But again, teachers fall into the 80-20 rule. 80% of them are terrible, 20% of them are great. And that's how we divide most of the world up. And the same goes with coaches. You have some excellent coaches there in every field. The thing about a coach is, you don't necessarily have to have experience in what you're teaching to be a great coach. For instance, there are plenty of great law professors who've never been in a courtroom, never practiced in a courtroom. They're still great. And they know how to teach, but they haven't done it. There are great athletic, for professional sports teams, that they coach professional sports teams, but they themselves have never played on a professional sports team. They're really good. But what's a mentor? A mentor is a person who's been there, done that. And that's what I am. I never teach professionally anything that I can't say I've been there and done that. And it doesn't mean I don't have an opinion on other things. I have plenty of opinions, but when it comes to my profession, it's only the things I've done. So here I am. I'm in front of, what do we call them, Generation X. And they have all their problems, all their stuff, all the challenges. And here I am. This middle-aged, religious, slightly overweight, bald guy telling them, hey, I know what you're going through. it's hard for them. They really can't relate. So I decided I'm going to write this book because a book adds credibility. I want people to know that I've been there and what I've been through. Now, I'm very out of the box. I was an out of the box kid. I'm out of the box adult. And thank God I'm out of the box, because I know that if I wasn't out of the box, chances are I wouldn't be here today. The reason that I keep saying I'm out of the box, because I see things that people don't, that other people don't. For instance, I like to believe, I don't know if this is true, but I like to believe I would have been one of those kooks a couple of thousand years ago who insisted the world was round, when everybody said the world was flat. And when I say everybody, I'm talking about the experts, the educated, the scientists, the religious leaders of the time, the intellectual leaders. Everybody said the world was flat, with the exception of a few oddballs. Do any of you know the story of, what's his name? Who can help me out here? The guy who broke the 4-minute mile. Roger Bannister. Roger Bannister. Okay? Now, I may be a little bit off here, so I'm going to give you the generalities of the story. But up until somewhere in the early 50s, the professionals, everybody said that man could not run a mile in less than 4 minutes, right? 4 minutes? Okay. And this was fact. Don't argue with the experts. This is fact. Man was not built. There was no way a man could run less than a 4-minute mile. And man had never done it. Well, one day, this guy, Roger Bannister, broke the 4-minute mile by just a few seconds. Within 6 months, over 50 other people ran the 4-minute mile faster than him. Some of them were high school kids. Today, I have no idea what the record is, but it's a lot better than 4 minutes. What happened? What happened? Roger Bannister was an oddball. He was out of the box. Okay? So if I ask you here, how many here believe that man can fly? Not with a jetpack, with just his own thing. How many believe man can fly? Well, I'm very happy that none of you raised your hands, because it would mean you're a nut. How many of you believe man can fly? Okay, so those of you who raise your hands, you're wrong. That's not the answer. What is the answer? I don't know. I don't think man can fly, from what I know now. But how can I say man can fly? I can't prove something that you can't prove a negative. Well, maybe you can, but in this case, you can't prove a negative. Just like you can't prove, people who were sure that the world, you could have said at the time, I don't know if the world was flat, but if you said the world is flat, you were wrong. So I don't know if man can fly or not, but I am open-minded. Every one of you here today, and I really appreciate you all coming out. There's so much stuff going on, thank God, in Jerusalem and Israel. I mean, there's so many different things, when we're trying to set the date here, we didn't do it this day because of this, and that day for this, but you know what, it really doesn't matter. There's always going to be something. And I really thank you guys for being here tonight. But you're here at the end of the day, not for me. Even those of you, like my daughter back there, who's here because of me, but at the end of the day, we're all here for a reason. And we may not even know what that reason is. Let me give you an analogy. And I ask you guys to use your imagination a little bit, because with everything I talk about, you got to use your imagination, okay? Imagine the most powerful computer ever conceived by man. The most powerful computer. Now, however much you can imagine that, you would have to multiply it by hundreds, even thousands. And we call that the mainframe. Now, the mainframe is somewhere up there. You can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it the mainframe, call it what you want. But that is the essence of the knowledge of the world. Each one of us are born with a personal computer. We call it a brain, vortex, we call it many different things, but it is a personal computer. This is what we think with. All of our PCs are connected to this mainframe. Now, just like when you connect any smaller computer to a big computer, you can't get all the information in because it would just blow up. So our PCs maybe are able to handle 2-3% of the mainframe, but we still have a connection to it. Now, if we only have knowledge of 2 to 3, let's even be real generous, 5% of what's possible in the world, that means that 95% we don't know about. So how can we say that man can't fly? We can't. So now let's get back to why you guys are here. My belief is that everybody in this room, and I don't like to say absolute, so let's say almost everybody in the room has something going on in their lives. Okay, what I call stuff. Something. It could be a health issue, it could be a personal relationship, it could be financial, it could be something like writing a book, which they've wanted to do forever, and it just never happened. They keep beating themselves up. Why do I write the book if I really want to write the book? Okay? It doesn't have to be something bad in our life, but we all have something that is something we want out of life and we're not getting. Now, we have all different ages in this group, in this room. We have some younger people, older people. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the average age here is 40 to 50 years old. Okay? Part of the challenge with being 40 to 50 years old is we're stuffed up. My mentor, the rest in peace gentleman by the name of Zig Ziglar, used to call it stinking thinking. What it means is that we have convinced ourselves that there are things we're not capable of doing. We're not possible. It's just not possible. We can't do it. And that's how we justify not doing what we want to do. Let's backpedal a little bit to the kids. Okay? But before I do that, let me say this. Let me go back a bit. I mentioned that we're all here for a reason. So we're all here because even though we've given up on whatever it is we want, somewhere inside of us we still want that. Okay? And again, I don't know why you're here. Some of you may think you're here for a reason. Some of you may know the reason you're here. Some of you may think it's this reason because I wanted to support Freddy, but it was really something else that drew you. But I believe that most of you consciously or subconsciously here because you're curious how to unleash the magical power within you. And that's why you're here tonight. So you have a choice this evening. You can either open up your mind a little bit and let some unconventional thinking come in, or you don't have to. The choice is yours. I mean, either way, we're having a great time. It's good food, great drinks, good wine, okay? So we're gonna have fun regardless. But if you have been sitting on that park bench for 30 years, praying to God that you win the lottery, maybe tonight is actually time to actually buy a ticket. So let's go back to the kids for a moment. What is the connection? Why do I keep talking about kids and us unleashing the magical power within us? When you write a book like this, or when you speak to people and you share what you went through and how your life is today versus how it was, and I have to tell you guys something. My life today has never, ever been better than it is now. Never in my entire life. It doesn't mean I haven't had great times. It doesn't mean I don't have problems now. I have challenges. I have what I call mosquito bites. I slip and fall and skin my knee, both literally and figuratively. Okay, the difference is I don't let it affect my life. I cry, I get up, and I move on with my life. So people will say, so what happened? What's the magic there? What's the secret? Everybody wants to know what the secret is. It's like when you lose weight. They want to know what the secret is. Well, what's the secret to losing weight? Eating less and getting more. I mean, there's no rocket scientist, but that we all understand. Well, now I'm going to give you something that's just as simple. How you can literally change your life tonight. Be a kid. Now that sounds, okay, what does it mean to be a kid? First of all, we have to go back to the way God created us. And it looks like most of the people in this room are believers, but I don't care if you're a believer or not. Again, call it whatever you want. When we come into this world, we come pure. A fetus is pure. Do you know they did a study, and there's only one thing that scares a child, a baby, the fear of falling. And there's a reason for that, I'm not sure what it is, but that's the only thing. But you can put a little baby in a pit of snakes, and that's fine. The baby won't freak out. Babies are very, very simple creatures. What do they need? They need to be changed, they need their food, and they need one other thing. What's the other thing they need? Love. Love. Love is what a child needs, what a baby needs, okay? Now, if you've been blessed to have been loved as a child, you're halfway there. But many times people aren't blessed to be loved as a child, or even if they are, it's still not not enough. So we have to go back into the womb for a moment. We have to sort of start again. Now, obviously, it's impossible to start again, but this is what we need to be doing. We need to be heading back to being a child and having fun and letting go. Now, again, this is not something I can teach you in a half an hour how to do. I want to just get across the message that whatever situation you're in today, I don't give a rip what it is, you have the power within you to change. You can think I'm talking harta barta, as they say, or not. But I can tell you, I dare you to read my book and look at me today and say, I lucked out and won the lottery. I didn't luck out and win the lottery. I discovered what's out there for all of us. It's so simple. What happened to me happens to most people is you start out as a child, you're pure as the driven snow, as they say, and then what I refer to as the man, this is I refer to in the book as the man. The man represents basically adults. We're all the man, okay? We corrupt children. We corrupt children, and slowly but slowly the child becomes corrupted and polluted until they reach a certain point where they become part of the man. If any of you have ever seen, what was that Star Trek show? They had this big lock. Also, there's a big movie about this, famous, whatever it is. We become part of the mass, the board. Thank you very much. Okay, you become part of the board, and that's it. You're just part of the establishment, and you give up.
You're not a Klingon.
What?
Don't be a Klingon.
Don't be a Klingon. But right, you can become part of the board. You know, we have
Resistance is futile.
exactly, but it's not. That's the point. Resistance is not futile, and I'm here to prove that it's not. And there are people, as I said, in this room who know me in different stages of my life who will attest to some of the things I am saying. Now, we have something, though, that a child doesn't have. You know what that is? We have maturity. That's the magic. See, a child has a wonderful ingredients. But just being a child doesn't give you enough of the recipe to have a great life, because a child is a child. A child doesn't understand that you can't run in the middle of the street because you'll get killed. A child doesn't have the maturity that we have. But you then take the maturity and the child and you put it together, and it is literally unbelievable what life can do for you and what you can do with your life. I want to sum up with a story that I hope will bring this home to you guys. I've been in Israel a long time. I came in my very early 20s to Israel, and I met a woman, we got married, had 5 wonderful children, and we were living here in Israel. She's an Israeli. We're no longer married, but she's an Israeli. And we decided to go back, well, to go to the States for a couple of years. And our kid, we had only 2 children at the time. They were still very young. And we decided, let's go. While the kids are young, we go to the States. And our intention was to come back. We went to the States, we went to Atlanta, Georgia, and we had a really good life there. While we were there, we had 2 more children. And then our oldest was about to enter 6th grade. And we said, we have to make a decision. Either we come back or we don't. Because it would not be fair to our children just to, to come later. So my ex-wife had been to Israel a couple of times during our hiatus, but I had not been back. So it was decided that I would come for a 2-week pilot trip, and I'd check it out. And she was really great. She said, even though she's Israeli and she has her family here, she said, whatever you decide, I'm good with. So I came. For 2 weeks, I'm not exaggerating. My hormones were racing. Every day I would speak to her on the phone, and I'd say, wow, Israel has changed so much. I can't wait to get back here. The next day I'd say, the bureaucracy is driving me nuts. There's no way we're coming back. It was back and forth, like a yo-yo. Finally, the last day of my trip arrives. I say, listen, I call her up, I say, I've decided this is it. We're not coming back. Israel's changed a lot, it's great, but life is good for us in the States. And she said, fine. And that was the final decision. Back in those days, you could check your bags in early through El Al. I was in Jerusalem, so I checked my bags in early. Had a flight the next morning very early. I went to a cousin's house in Rosh Hashanah, where I was going to spend the evening. And when I got to his house, I said, Ariel, do me a favor. Please call a taxi company, order a cab, and get me a good price. Now, of course, why did I ask him as opposed to calling themselves? Accent, exactly. You know, I was sure they were going to rip me off. So I hear him on the phone, 70 shekels, this, that. Finally, 50 shekels is the price, agreed on. Next morning, cab drives up. I just have my attaché case, my carry-on. Cab driver gets out, comes, takes my bag, puts it in the trunk. We're on our way to the airport. This guy, first of all, he's a stereotypical Israeli cab driver. Okay, he has the Babi Sal up there, he has the picture of the Rebbe from Chabad, he has the Tehillim, but he has no kippah on his head. Okay, typical Israeli, stereotypical. And he is the nicest guy you'll ever want to meet. He's just talking, and he's nice, and he's asking me why I was here, and I said, well, we're just thinking about coming back to Israel. Oh, you should. Israel really needs Jews. I mean, he is great, okay? You couldn't find a friendlier guy. So I'm sitting there, and what do you think is going through my mind at that moment? I'm freaking out. I'm thinking, we're going to get there, he's going to rip me off. He's going to say, not 50, he's going to say 60 or 70. I'm getting heart palpitations. I'm sweating. I really, even now as I tell you this story 30 years later, I feel it. I'm ready to explode. My blood pressure's going up. And he's just as nice as going to be. Okay, I'm really freaking out. We arrive at the airport. Again, he gets out, goes to get my bag, hands it to me. Now remember, the price is supposed to be 50 shekels. And I know we're going to have a big fight there. I know what he's going to do. He's going to say 60 shekels. I'm going to tell him, you so-and-so, and blah, 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 and my flight is ruined, and my day is ruined, and everything I've just ruined for myself. So he gives me the bag, and he says, 40 shekels. I can't believe it. Not only can't I believe it, I am not exaggerating to you. At that moment, I decided we were coming back to Israel. I am not exaggerating. You guys are here today because of that guy. I have 5 children. 3 have done the army. One's in Keva. One's about to go in the army because of this guy. Crazy. Who is this guy? Who was this guy? Was he Elijah the prophet? Did he know what he was doing? Did he make a mistake and say the wrong price? Did he do it intentionally? Is he normally a crook and would charge somebody 60, 70 shekels? Or did he do it all the time? Who the heck knows? Who is this guy? I don't know. I wouldn't even recognize him if I saw him on the street today. He changed the world. He literally changed the world. Now, there are only 2 options here. He did it intentionally or didn't do it intentionally. Now, bottom line, it doesn't matter. But if he did it intentionally, it means he's in the 20% of the world. If he did it unintentionally, he's in the 80% of the world. Now that's the choice you guys now have. Do you want to be an 80%er or a 20%er? Now, there's nothing wrong with being an 80%er. Obviously, we couldn't have 20%ers without 80%ers. So there's nothing wrong with it. But I'm telling you, if there's anything you leave the room with this evening, it's no more justifying to yourself that you can't. You can make a decision and say, I don't want to. I'm not willing to pay the price. There's no way. Everyone in this room, as long as we're talking about something within the laws of God, man, and nature. And with nature, I put a big asterisk, because as we said, we don't really know what's nature or not. But many things we're talking about, we already know is nature. It's within your grasp. So I throw down the gauntlet to you and say to you, why don't you be a little out of the box for just 30 days? Just 30 days. Believe that you have the capabilities to do something that nobody believes you can do. Or you can, whatever it is that your thing is, go for it. Anyway, I want to thank you all for being here this evening. And please, we got plenty more food and wine and drink, and let's party. Thank you very much.